just to re-emphasize, this is my blab this afternoon about how social is not the business solution that everybody seems to think that it is. It's something that's been driven by my experience over the past couple of weeks whilst out networking in the UK, where the conversation 9 times out of 10 with business owners and senior people within various businesses all seem to be looking towards social media as the answer to all of their problems. I just don't believe that that is the case when it comes to communicating out about any business, service provider, whatever it may be. I think there's a whole lot more involved than just sticking things out there on social. Even good social, from that point of view, isn't a guaranteed recipe for success. It's certainly not the way that it's often portrayed to be anyway. So if this is something that you are passionate about, something that you're interested in discussing, I'd love to get involved and chat to you this afternoon. Is there anybody out there that would like to come and get into one of the seats or ask a question? Good afternoon, Michael. Welcome to the blab. And do you have any questions that you'd like to put forward or some insight that you'd like to share? We have some seats spare. If you'd like to come and get involved, that'd be most welcome. Like I said, it's a discussion this afternoon really around why social isn't going to necessarily be the game changer for most businesses. And in particular, I think that you're starting to see filtering through now, there's a few sort of mainstream articles where people are analysing the sort of use of social over the last few months and the way in which it's changing. So I think there's a lot to be said for thinking outside of that particular box. Okay, Michael, I understand you're having some tech issues, perhaps with the computer there. Is there a question that you'd like to ask this afternoon? And anybody else who's online at the moment wants to get involved, we have some seats spare. Very happy to answer some questions around this topic this afternoon. Just to give a bit of background to who I am and why I think that I'm in a position to sort of deliver this blab this afternoon. I've been doing creative comms in ad agencies, design agencies, etc. for nearly 20 years. And over that time, I've kind of seen quite a lot of things work very well. I've seen things that have fallen flat on their face as well. So it's just a case of being realistic, I think, with a lot of these things about what's going to actually work. Hi, we also have Alan, who's just joined from Compass Media. Welcome to Alan and welcome to Colin. Is anybody like to jump in one of the seats and get involved with this discussion this afternoon or ask any questions? Can I explain the subject in some more detail, the meaning behind all the use of caps for the... Okay, Michael. Out and about, networking, as I'm sure we all do over the past couple of, I would say actually probably the past couple of months. Most of the conversations I have had with people in business, they seem to be under this misconception that doing some sort of social activity is the solution to all of their business comms needs. It's the one thing that's going to have a really quick sort of reaction with their customers, and they seem to think that all of a sudden that's going to start driving lots of traffic through their various different businesses. I just don't believe that that is the case. I think that there's way too much emphasis being placed on social in general today, and I think that there's a whole heap of different things that that come together to deliver a cumulative effect. Social does have a part to play, don't get me wrong. I'm not sort of belittling social by any means, but there's a lot more involved than just simply saying, yeah, social will solve all your problems. We have a few more people who've joined in. Hi to Tim McVeigh and hello to Nick from Forex Alerts. So another question come in from Michael here. Strategy on social plays and integrated part in communications. Yeah, that's what I would say. It's interesting when you start these conversations with people, they want to know about who you are, what you do. As soon as I mention that I'm anything to do with marketing and comms, although branding is more my kind of background, the first thing that they start to jump on and ask you is, so which social channels should I be using, and how do I measure whether I should be using Twitter, Facebook, etc. Like that's the only way of communicating out what it is that they do. The truth of it is, I think all too often people haven't spent enough time thinking about who their existing customers are and who they'd like to be their next customer from that point of view. There's this misconception that, doing things through social are going to solve all of that incredibly quickly. It's just not true. Not without some proper understanding of who it is that you're talking to in the first place. And if you don't have that, then, it's really a real shot in the dark. One of the sort of analogies that I've been using in my conversations, yeah, the phones are going in the background. Sorry about that, guys. One of the analogies that I've used in the past, and I think it resonates particularly well, is pre sort of the big digital explosion. If you were a business and you were looking to get your messages out, you were looking at doing things through print or printed media in terms of newspapers, magazines, whatever it might have been. And in those days, people used to spend a lot of time doing research, thinking about who their customers were, how they wanted to talk to them, what the customer journey was going to be as part of the interaction with that brand before they went and spent however many thousands or hundreds of pounds in terms of placing ads and things like that. These days, because it's perceived to have very little cost or very little upfront cost, people jump in with very knee-jerk reactions, ill thought through sort of concepts, and suddenly you've got all these garbled messages out there generating a massive amount of noise on all the different channels. And does any of it actually connect with customers? I think not in a lot of instances. I think, it is quite often a one-way broadcast. And I'm just not convinced that it's the big kind of silver bullet that everybody's looking for. Anybody care to disagree or share some insight as to what your sort of views are around this? It's good for building trust and credibility. I totally agree. Tim'd like to come in. Hey, good afternoon, Tim.
How are you going?
How are you doing?
Doing really well. Look, I think you're right in terms that social is a part of the solution, but it's never all the solution. It's great to have a relationship with the customers. It's great to develop a sense of understanding them and then listening to them and having all that kind of social interaction that you can have in a social network. But at the same time, you want to know what you want to say. You want to know how you want to present, and you want to have a sense of dialogue that your customers connect with. That's you're a branding guy, you'd understand that it really, it's only a part of the conversation is the language that you're using in terms of just dialogue. Presentation, all those kind of things, all are a part of that sort of social mechanism. You want to make a good impression.
Yeah, totally agree, Tim. And you increasingly, because we're being bombarded by all of this stuff everywhere that we look, it needs to work harder than it ever has. And so it needs to be more consistent. It needs to be more creative. You need to do more research to make sure you're talking to the right people at the right time. But instead, perversely, everybody jumps in and says, no, I'll just do this, I'll just do that. And there's very much just some real mixed messages that go out on things. And I think lots of businesses are guilty of it. And you can see why, because there is this enormous peer pressure to do stuff. But I don't actually believe a lot of it's really thought through in any great sort of depth with any detail. And even to the point of once they've started the broadcast, they don't actually understand where they're going to take it. So if it does start to resonate, then they have a whole another problem on their hands in that where's this going? So yeah, it's really interesting, I think.
Well, I think any social mechanism, you want to define what you want to achieve out of it first, don't you?
Yeah.
So unless you actually set your goal, you don't know whether you hit anything. So
true.
Often people say, well, if all my goal is to get followers, great. Well, then if you get followers, you've ticked that off. But that might not necessarily be the thing that you want to achieve in social. You know, if they're not in your target market, if they're not there to buy your product, they're probably not the people you need in your social network.
It's true. It's true. But you must have found it same as I do. It's the thing that everybody. So it's almost like the default now with these things. It seems to be whatever area of business somebody's in, whether it's a direct to consumer or whether it's a business to business product, they seem to feel that this massive pressure on their shoulders that they've got to be doing social, and that social is the answer to all of their problems. And yeah, I love the filters, by the way, you're running there on your camera.
I'm having fun. So I was just sort of mucking around, having a bit of fun. But it's kind of fun to get sort of, I just need to switch off that cartoon filter and then I'll look kind of normal. Look at that. So yeah. Now I'm sort of
there we go, look. Hey. So that, I guess, it's me slightly on my soapbox, I suppose, this week. Just saying, going slightly against the grain, I think, at the moment. As I mentioned earlier, there are a few articles that are starting to get some circulation now that are questioning social quite heavily, and are saying it's not the answer. It still seems to be very much, it's in everybody's mindset that is the silver bullet that's going to fix every problem we've got in the business. Forget anything else, social will do it, and it just won't on its own.
No, I don't think it will either. I think social is a great thing. I think it's the first time that consumers feel like they can talk to a brand and influence a brand, and therefore a brand needs to be able to listen and react to that influence and make customers happy because they are being influenced. So it puts the shoe on the other foot. But at the same time, I think for brands to create volume, and we all know that marketing is about volume and having large amplification, a large voice to a larger audience. That's where, unless you're driving content that drives eyeballs, then really that's where your social is. It's going to be in your content, in your communication, how you engage an audience with that content.
Yeah, I think as well, a lot of businesses have lost sight of the fact that it's all about people. People buy from people. It doesn't matter whether you're a huge brand or a small little, standalone business around the corner. If you're not good with your communication skills on a personal level, then it falls apart. There's countless examples of big brands that have cocked up social to such huge degrees by thinking they can run automated replies, they can outsource it to a team of people who know little, if anything, about the business. They may know something about the product, but the product is that's only one facet of the business. And more than ever now, through all these different touch points, people want to actually get to know a little bit more. They want to scratch underneath the surface. And when they're doing that, it needs someone of real authority to be coming back, not someone that's, kept at arm's length and said, this is the default response to this type of thing, working from scripts. It really, if anything, that's the worst kind of use of social for me, because it just smacks of ignorance. This is us, we're big and mighty, and we don't kind of talk to little old you. We just expect you to buy it.
Yeah.
And people are going to have to get on board and kind of address this, really, because if they don't, then first and foremost, the big boys have got a lot to lose because their arrogance will show through. But the small upstarts that do it well will connect with people and will build genuine relationships relationships
Sure.
on levels that we've never had before, because we just haven't had the devices and the comms to do it. But now it's there. You look at this, what we're doing now, and across the world, we can talk to whoever we want, multiple people. It's a fantastic, thing. We've had a question come in about what are the thoughts. What are my thoughts around organisations outsourcing social? That's a good question. A really, really good question. My thoughts are, as a principle, there's nothing that it's not something I would object to, but I believe the reason that principle is flawed is that when people do that, they don't actually give the level of autonomy and the information to the people that they're asking to look after it to do a decent job. So if someone's going to look after your social channel, in my eyes anyway, and please, if anybody has anything that they want to offer up here, please add this in. I think that if you're looking after a social channel, you need to know that business inside out, every element of it, from whichever angle somebody's coming at. It's easy to look after the sort of direct sales channel, but what about all the after sales? What about the customer service? What about the history, the whys and the wherefores of why that business exists and where it's going, what it's looking to achieve next? Somebody that's briefed to look after a social channel and is drip fed a few little tidbits now and again from a marketing director about how they want the brand to be perceived for the next 6 months isn't going to be able to answer that with any degree of authority, and it's going to be seen straight through. I think the principle's good, but all too often the execution is poor because the people that are put at in the firing line, and they are quite literally in the firing line on this sort of side of things, they don't have the info.
Often it's also like how people react to a call center. That if it's not done well, then it's an awful experience for the customer. And I'm surprised how many companies mustn't actually call their own help centers and call centers, because if they did, they'd know that they're just delivering the worst service and worst experience of their brand that they can deliver.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think that's what social has to be like. You have to experience your social conversation as if you are a customer, and what it's like to hear and experience your brand from their perspective.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say that some of the bigger brands are good at putting people who are in more senior management roles back on shop floors and things like that to keep them in touch with what's going on, which is great. But that philosophy needs to be translated through to what they're doing in a social comms channel, certainly, because otherwise, it will fall apart very quickly. But I think just coming back to this whole business of social not being the business solution, I think more than ever now, it's about kind of integrating and continuity of message, making sure the business understands what it is that they're doing and why they're doing it, because that's all too often, it can be out there externally and they talk to customers about in a third party about how they do all these things. But when you actually speak to the people who are delivering it, if they don't understand that and don't connect with it, well, then that translates through. And that's where, again, if they are looking after the social channel, it falls apart. I also feel a really important part that's often overlooked within this whole mix is creativity, because more so than ever today, it's about being really creative. Sorry, Tim.
I think that's the real challenge, and I guess that's where great content and great sort of creative nuggets that people are attracted to. And when you get that great creative, you see people drawn to it. But often now, I think it's hard to be creative in a small box on Facebook. It's hard to be creative within the medium that the social pages are giving us. So where you have to be creative is in your sort of landing pages, where your content actually is, rather than in these tiny little boxes that Facebook allow you to kind of advertise in. Yeah,
and I think also it's about showing respect for the different sort of channels and what people are doing in those channels. You know, there's been a lot of talk recently of Instagram and the ads that have been introduced there. It's not working because people don't want to be looking at ads for 2 or 3 seconds before they can get to the posts that they want to look at. You know, that's where it's all going wrong, because it's not a natural evolution. It's been forced down people's throats in places that they don't want to see it, which is why, you know, there was such a heavy backlash when Facebook introduced it as well, because all too often, you know, people are there in a social sort of sphere, and brands sometimes just don't seem to get that whole idea that private sort of social stuff and brands don't necessarily sit side by side. But, you know, hey, we'll see where some of it goes. We've got a few comments that are coming in. People agreeing with what we're saying about the outsourcing and the context. Yeah. It is. It's an interesting one. Is that the context? Wow.
So of course, Andy, you've raised that social is not the business solution. Now, I guess you have to tell us what is the business solution.
Yeah, there's a loaded question if ever there was one. Honestly, you know, what I don't want this to be is basically my tirade against social, because social has its place. And every business has its own sort of unique elements, unique selling points. I think it truly varies depending on the business as to what's the answer. My reason for this today is because it just seems to be everybody saying social will fix everything, and it doesn't.
The great panacea.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I found really works well for me as a business is I do some kind of old school postal mailings, because I think everybody gets emailings, they get so much stuff on social. Yeah. If you can give somebody an object that is intriguing and
they can relate to, and it becomes
actually connects. Yeah, it's a true gift that you're sharing with them, and it's not kind of ramming it down their throat when they're in an area where, you know, they wouldn't expect to sort of see that sort of thing. It's something that comes in the post, so it's got an element of being special, just because we all
who gets stuff in the mailbox nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's really nice when you receive something in the post. You think, well, actually, these people have taken the time to think about me as a person, especially if it's personalised to you. You know, and it addresses you and specifics of your needs and things like that. I think, wow. So these people have taken a bit of time. They understand me. You know, I mean, emails, for example. How many times do you get an email when you've bought a product from a company and they talk to you as though you've been buying for them for 6 months or a year, or you know, vice versa? It can flip the other way because they don't. You know, there's an arrogance around the data
between the data they have.
Exactly. And
the relationship you've already established.
Yeah, there is no excuse for that at all, because, you know, they have all of those, all that data. We've never had that level of complexity of knowing where people are in the customer journey now. So there is absolutely no excuse for those kind of blanket emails. It just shows arrogance, really, to be honest. And that's where, you know, as we've already said, I think it comes down to much more connecting on a one-to-one level with people buying from the people within a business or within a brand, because that person, that individual, shows a genuine understanding of what your need is at that particular moment in time. And, you know, social, yes, it can do that. And for some people and certain products, it'll work. Others, I think that there's umpteen other different ways that you can communicate out without. I'm not saying you wouldn't involve social in that, because it's the world in which we live. You know, if you weren't on there, people would question the kind of integrity of the brand and why you weren't doing it. But I don't think it's the be all and end all by any stretch. We've got a question.
What you wanted me to think about was that it's still a social reaction, that any reaction with the customer is a social reaction, but it's how you manage that relationship. Is it a new transaction? Is it something that I've established? I should know. As you know, I should know where they stand in that chain, and I should be able to talk to them within the context of those relationships. And so that then when I am having that social exchange, whether it's through mail, whether it's through email or content, that the content fits the relationship. And that's where good social kind of happens.
I think when it comes down to it, the honest answer is that everyone's going to have to work harder at these things. The misconception is that the technology has kind of made it easy to just blanket talk to everybody about everything. Well, that doesn't work. No one wants to be just looked at as just being a number. So everybody's going to have to work a lot harder at these things and make sure that data's properly segmented. They understand, the journey more, because I think that's the other thing with a lot of kind of businesses is that they don't seem to understand the entry point, and then once somebody's bought a product or bought into a service, what's their experience then with that? How does that progress forward? When do they come back? You don't want them coming back when there's a problem. You want them coming back when they're still elated and super happy with their first touch. And there are businesses out there that are doing this and they're doing it well, but they're few and far between. And when you start to talk to people about a lot of this sort of stuff, I quite often just see this glaze start to come across people's faces as they just sort of say, I don't understand, because, and they'll give an example of something that Coca-Cola did or one of the, gigantic global brands, and they'll say, oh, well, they did this on social and, that's got like million or so views. And it's like, yeah, but, you're not Coca-Cola. Exactly.
It's the resources.
Exactly.
And look, any relationship, there's a cost of time.
Yeah,
and
cost there is.
Social is a relationship. If you can have a relationship with your customers, at least a bare minimum, it's an investment in time. And every good relationship thrives on that kind of investment.
Totally agree. So, that is where I say that people are going to have to work harder. And that's where I think kind of continuity of message and creativity are really, really going to come to the fore, because it's going to require a lot more effort for this to actually resonate now, because of the sheer volume of noise that's out there. It's unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. There's some great TED Talks and stuff around it, just on photographic images. In the last, I think it's 5 years, there's been more photographic images generated in the world than there was in history before that. And it's just, when you start thinking about it like that, you think, wow, there is a lot of
stored somewhere.
Yeah, and there's a lot of noise, and equally, another one that I also find quite interesting is the number of people that are using the various free apps and are naive of the data that they're giving away all the time around that.
Well, certainly, if it's free, normally you're the product.
Yeah, well, either that or there's a lot of money to be made out of the data that you're giving from using that product, put it that way. So, yeah, like I say, it's maybe a bit of a hobby horse thing, but I think that this is where it's going to go. And if anything, I can't see the tide turning particularly quickly. I think if people are going to be looking for more of what the type of thing we've got here on Blab, where it's a one-to-one personal interaction, although anybody else that wants to jump in a seat is most welcome. But yeah, I think there's going to be more of that, and that's going to be, the type of things that are going to resonate. 'Cause it's like a proper relationship, and in the past, they've been able to get away with doing very superficial things and doing it on, a very kind of one-catch-all approach, where there wasn't that degree of thinking about it. Who is this person? Right. Okay. Why have they bought from us? Why have they interacted with us in the past? How can we, offer something of real value to them that's bespoke to them? And I just don't believe that many people are thinking about that when they're using social.
Sure.
You see it in Twitter all the time. It's just awash with,
and it's just a broadcast and just
it is,
automated, or And rarely do you see much active social listening, even from sort of reasonable brands sometimes.
Yeah, again, it just depends on what they're sort of, how they've set their stall out. Some of them have made a real conscious effort to be pushing this forward and are doing it very well. Others are kind of still in the, hey, we're the big brand and we do what we like, and you know, you're a customer, this is how it's going to be delivered type of approach, which I think is going to start to sort of fade out, really. You know, hopefully, anyway. But, you know, I might be wrong on these things. Like I said, I'm happy to be challenged if anyone wants to challenge us this afternoon on this thinking. I think that me and Tim are pretty much on the same page, and certainly some of the comments that are coming through the feed seem to suggest the same. But if anybody's got a challenge that they'd like to put forward, I'm happy to have that discussion as well.
I think everyone just craves something better, don't they? At the end of the day, when we're dealing with companies, when we're dealing with product or brands or any experience that we want that sense of excellence. We want to actually feel like we're special, that when we give our money away for something, that we get value back for that exchange. And the more brands can tap into the feeling that the customer can have from all the way, every touch point, from just enjoying the product, from enjoying the experience of purchasing the product, from the information they get from it, all of that builds into the depth of a relationship that then is tapped onto social. That's where all those things tie together to make the whole experience worthwhile for the customer. Yeah.
You know, it's just, I think it's an actual sea change moment that we're coming to be absolutely honest within it all, because the two common feeds, which is Facebook and Twitter, are just saturated. In fact, it's gone beyond saturation, I think, now with a lot of that. And so there's going to be, an almost a reset, I think, coming quite soon, as people say, right, enough is enough. This is just not what I want in my life. I'm fed up of these coming, these ads coming into my feed unannounced. They show little respect for who I am, what I'm interested in, and I'm on here to have a good time and catch up with my friends. I don't want to be, constantly being talked to about, do you want to get this, upgrade to the other, whatever it might be. So, yeah, I think there's big changes about put it that way.
The research that I've kind of been reading and is certainly in terms of millennials and that is that they're looking for that authentic story that they can connect with brands. They're looking for a sense of depth that goes beyond even the product. So if they get the product, that's a good thing. But if they get the philosophy behind the product, then they're more likely to get on board with it. So I think there is that sort of level of seriousness that we just don't want to sort of wear a logo and feel like we're attached to a brand. Yeah,
I always kind of feel for millennials because they seem to be the ones that are always sort of
have to pick up the pieces.
The target in all of these things, because things have changed a lot for their generation. Everything seems to focus around them, and hey, they don't need
18 to 25. They've always been 18 to 25. That's where the money is. Even though technically we're going into an aging population, look at me. That really marketers still want to sort of tap into that, the energy, I guess, of youth and the energy of, because
I agree entirely. We all think
they grow with you, they move with you, and the marketers will catch the next wave.
Oh yeah, no, I understand that. It's what I kind of feel sorry for when millennials are often referred to in these things is they're kind of they're portrayed as having little values because they've grown up in this digital world, and why do they need any possessions because everything's digital? And it's simply not true. They have all the same values that people have had for generations. And they want all the same. They want all of those same things. They may be happy to accept them coming through in slightly different mediums and media. That's fine. That's just progress, But when it comes down to it, it's still they want the trust of a relationship. They want the trust of being treated as an individual. So when brands talk about, oh well, we do this because we're talking to millennials. It's, for me, it's complete and utter rubbish, and I really feel for those guys, because I think, you know, there's massive ignorance shown for just their generation, actually, to be honest. Just looking through the feeds to see who else has joined us recently. Oh, we've got another message. The brand behind social is an important discussion. Oh, you're about to leave us, are you? I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I find this fascinating, to be honest. It's something that I come across constantly in my work. And whether that be that I'm talking to potential clients or just talking to other people about what it is that I do as a line of business, it really does concern me that there's still this myth, and it's perpetuated, that you should always be doing lots and lots of social stuff. Because if, you know, depending on your business, you need to really understand who your customers are first and foremost. And once you know who those guys are, where they are, what are their habits? You know, what are the things they like? What are the things they dislike? And, you know, when would be an appropriate moment to talk to them? Not the kind of assumption that, oh, well, they'll want to come and look at our Facebook feed, or we should fill their Facebook feed with content about us. And until we've got to that sort of stage of genuine understanding and connection with people, and showing respect, you know, that's the thing. It really is about showing respect. I know earlier, Tim, you mentioned about like the cold callers. It still happens today. You still get cold calling. You get it on your mobile, landline, everything. Does it actually work? Not very often, really. You know.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe on a few vulnerable people, you know, that are unsuspecting. You know, it tends.
How does that reflect on the company? Like, especially like banks and insurance companies, all those. Yet they push so hard for that, and I'm not sure it's actually, you know, at the end of the day, does it help your relationship with your customer? I
think it does more damage, to be honest, than anything. Particularly here in the UK on utilities, I know that they still do a lot of cold calling, and there has been such a strong backlash against that, because, again, you know, you've got people who have got no real connection with what it is that they're doing, what they're selling. They don't understand the first thing about it. They're reading from a predetermined script. There's no genuine dialogue there. In lots of instances here in the UK, things are coming from call centres in other parts of the world, which, whilst there's nothing wrong with that per se, you then have issues to do with different cultures and cultural differences that don't translate well. And that's not a reflection of the people who are involved at either end of that conversation. It's a reflection of the brand not understanding their customers. Because, you know, how is somebody at the other side of the world supposed to understand about the weather and the influences that make you choose a particular utility company? They're not. It's just complete and utter rubbish. So that's, I suppose, those are the sorts of things that, it sticks in my throat. And I thought, what the heck? I'm going to make a point of doing a slightly controversial blab, and we'll see where it goes.
Why not? Shake the tree.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I think will be fascinating, just picking up on something very topical, is to see what Volkswagen do to dig themselves out of this hole that they've put themselves in.
I think no one likes to be caught in a lie, and they've been caught in a big one. So.
Yeah, it's a very big one, especially when you're talking about something that's there for the good of everybody, and they've basically just flaunted it for their own gain. So there's going to be a lot of work to be done there to save face. In fact, just before I came on here, there's a lot of rumours flying around this afternoon that they could even just let it go, let the damage be done, and just let it fall by the wayside, which seems unthinkable. But hey, I guess they've got fingers in lots of pies these days. It's not as simple as it once was. So who knows? Oh,
is sure there any... PR people are working overtime at the moment.
Yeah, I think they've got their work cut out, quite frankly. That's, as holes go, that's a pretty deep one to get yourself out of. It's going to require some some extreme creative thinking, I think, to work that one out and make it spin to be more positive than where it is today. Put it that way. Is there anybody else that's got any questions?
I think there's only you and I, my friend.
I know. It's I'm quite surprised actually. I thought that this would be a bit more of a hot potato than what it's proven. I've enjoyed.
You've got to also look at who else is in the at the top of the blab channels and all that kind of thing.
No.
So how? I don't know if you want to go off the record now, or then you can make it a general chat kind of thing.
Sure, yeah, go on. Happy. Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, happy with that, Tim. Yeah, fire away.
No, that's fine. I just figured that you're recording. Some people like to kind of wind it up and hit the recording.
We'll close that off there. Then we'll just we'll keep it